It's the World Time Attack Podcast, a podcast about the most exciting form of no-holds-barred motorsport known to this universe.
Oh, Bakes, we just started, mate. All right, everybody, welcome back to the World Time Attack Challenge Off the Record podcast. Today we've got a couple of very special guests. So some key figures from the RP968 team. We've got the owner of the RP968, the RP in RP968, Rod Pobestek. And we also have the driver of this record-breaking juggernaut,
Thank you.
Yep. Good to be here.
So last time we spoke to you guys was the video that we created in 2019, and we had high hopes for the car, and the car did deliver. So we did see another 119 time, a 119.277, inching us ever closer to that outright lap record, which undoubtedly in April we might get to see the records tumble again. But as you know, this podcast is called Off the Record, so we're not here to talk about the record. We are here to talk about everything that happens outside of the track and everything that's led up to the journey that you gentlemen are here to get you guys to the point today. So we reached out to our social channels and we got a few questions from our fans, something that they want to know about, the two key personnel of the RP968 team. So I might get started with you, Rod. I've got a few questions here. So first of all, where did the story of the Porsche start? How did this car come into your possession?
Well, I started with the 944 Turbo, which is a similar sort of car, but I'd sort of heard a little bit about the 968 before that because it's sort of a change in Porsche's attitude in the late 80s when they decided to start changing the company. So they went back to fundamentals and wanted to make a car that they thought would really suit the future. So it's the 50-50 weight distribution is the whole side of the car. And
that was the big selling point for you over the rear engine, mid-engine 911s?
Well, look, it's got a whole outsider element compared with a normal Porsche, but it's called a normal Porsche. It's not really considered as a Porsche by the Porsche people.
The purists.
Yeah. They do look down on it, but that's part of the attraction. But it's also that it's made to be a proper car right from the beginning, using Porsche's proper engineering and getting everything, the fundamentals, much closer to how they should be. Awesome.
So that's why you chose it as the base. So when you decided I'm going time attack racing, what was the vision there, or where did the vision begin? Did it begin as a track car for you?
It started as a 944. It was a road car.
Yeah.
Then it turned into a track car, and then I always did really want a 968, but the 968 got a difference to a 944 Turbo. It's just a naturally aspirated car. The 944 Turbo's got an incredible amount of potential in it. Mm-hmm. But the 968's just got a bigger engine, and Porsche never got to turbocharge that car because another problem with Porsche at that time, and they sort of gave up on the 968 before they finished developing it. And it seemed just a perfect platform, really.
There you go. So how did you get to enjoy the car before it became the car that it is today?
Well, this car was specifically always bought to be modified to be a track car originally. And so I drove it a lot when it was naturally aspirated, a real lot. It's a fantastic little car. But then I decided to turn it into a track car. But we went down a route with the car which I wasn't really happy with. And then in 2008, there's a lot of financial problems with the whole car. And the whole project went off, just finished. Yep. It was over.
That was the GFC time, 2007, 2008.
Just, I ran out of money. I couldn't do anything with it. So it just sat idle for a long, long time. And then eventually I decided to sort of try and get back onto it. And then we just had a few meetings with some friends of mine, and we're working on the car. And we were just talking about what I wanted to do with the car and change the suspension, lots of power, lightweight, things like that. And then Dion, my engineer, said, "So you're going to build a time attack car?" And I just looked at him, and that's when I thought, well, yeah, that is what I'm going to do. And it just really came from that. And then but it started off as a little project and just went a lot further. Yeah, completely.
So what inspirations did you have when you decided I'm throwing the gate open, I'm going to let this project snowball? What other cars did you look up to at the time?
Well, to be honest, I had a friend of mine, Patrick Garvin, who had a really fast 944 turbo, who ran in some of the early time attack, and his car was good. It was fast, but I knew him pretty well, and I knew what he'd put into his car, and so I could see there was a lot of potential to do things, and I just got a bit inspired by that, and then I think really when I first met my aerodynamicist, Sam Diasonos, he was in the same garage as under Suzuki's car, and when I saw the rear of under Suzuki's car, that was pretty wow. Just wow, you know.
What about it? I mean, obviously, for people who aren't familiar with Under's car, what specifically about the underbody, or was it just the big wildness of it?
It is the wildness of it, but it's just such a big diffuser there. It's just so big, and you think, wow, you can actually do that.
Had you seen anything like that prior to time attack?
Look, there's a few Group C cars like that, but nothing as dramatic as that. And particularly, like it's like when you've got a road car and you want to make it go fast. That's like a dream. You've still got a car you can theoretically drive on the road.
Yeah. So speaking of going fast, the jewel of the crown in the RP968 is the Thor engine, as it's become known, the 4-litre Porsche blocked billet thing.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about how that came to be your selected heart for the RP968?
Well, look, we had a stock engine, and we got to about 800 horsepower, and we just knew we were right at the limit of it. And I think Richard said to me, oh, look, we need a couple of hundred more horsepower. And we didn't really. We only needed 50 or 100, really. But it just seemed, if you want to go faster, you really want to,
give it
you
all,
want a bit
give
of
it
margin
everything.
for error.
Yeah. Lovely.
And then we just thought about what to do. And then I met Oscar from Elmer, and he's a pretty sort of, why can't we do that sort of guy? And that's how it started, from just a 3-litre billet block that can take a real lot of boost into a big 4-litre thing that can really make a lot of
all the boost.
Yeah.
All the boost.
We haven't even got to all the boost yet.
Which brings me to my next question. So the car as it sits today, has it reached the vision that you expected for it, or is there still a way to go?
No, not at all.
Not at all?
I don't really know how fast it can go, but you just see what we've done with the car, and it should be going. It should be going faster now.
Yeah, right. So there's still much more left in the tank, eh?
Yeah.
It's interesting. So speaking of driving, I'll move on to Bart now. So in terms of driving the car, no one's taken the car as fast as you have around the track. So, but apart from that, people want to know, who is Barton Mawer? Like, a lot of people who aren't familiar with World Time Attack or know that you've driven that car don't know that you've got such a long career behind you. So where did you start driving, Bart? Where did professional motorsport begin for you?
Yeah, so I came up through the traditional ranks of karting, Formula Ford, and then Formula 3 is when I sort of started hitting my straps and finished runner-up in Australia to Michael Caruso in 2003 in Formula 3. So then I went over to Europe and raced Formula 3 over there, and that was really good. That was obviously world stage at that time, and my budget only allowed me to race in the Class B category of Formula 3, so that's the older class cars, but we were racing against Lewis Hamilton, and in Europe when I went over there, and Nico, and then in England it was sort of Nelson Piquet Jr. and a lot of those sort of guys. So it was just so good to be racing at that level and pushing myself to get up to that level. And then I head over to America and racing from Atlantic when that sort of came to a new phase, and they had a big prize pool to get to IndyCars. So that was against guys like Simon Pagenaud and Graham Rahal, and that was good, but I only completed half a season there. And then I tested with Australia in the A1GP team and stayed on there as a reserve driver. And after that sort of was the end of my open wheeler career, which for a lot of Australians racing open wheelers overseas, unless you get to F1, it sort of just gets unnoticed, really.
Oh, right, okay.
So I probably had a more success and not a bigger profile, but certainly done more overseas than I had here. So then when I came back, I had a sponsor keen to do Courier Cup Porsches. So I did that, and that sort of moved me over into the GT side of racing. I never got to go down the vet supercar path, and that's where the household names come about in this country. But there's just so many other categories and things going on out there, and then I've just developed my career and my job, my income is driver training and coaching and testing cars, driving cars, and then racing when the opportunity comes.
Yeah, awesome. So apart from the RP968 or World Time Attack, what else are you driving currently?
So GT, so I race with Industry Racing, Nick Kelly Racing. So he's just shifted from an Audi R8 GT3 car to a Mercedes AMG. So I do the endurance races with him. And then I was involved pre-COVID with the S5000s when that all launched off with a Melbourne-based team. So pretty much just gun for hire. Anything comes up, I'm there.
All right, you heard it here first, everybody. So the RP968, you've driven a lot of open wheelers, GTs, a variation of different race cars. The RP968 is a very unique aero car. So how does having that huge aero package impact the way you have to drive it compared to let's say a GT car or open wheeler? Yeah,
it's more like a big open wheeler. So the Formula Atlantic cars we drove, they peaked at 4G lateral on a positive camber corner, and it's a bit more like that. And the aero's a funny thing because obviously we're just building up more and more aero numbers, but it's just blind faith. You just have to commit to these corners that beyond what your brain really thinks is reasonable or rational. So I seem to suit the aero type cars. So, the F3 cars and that seem to be where I sort of excelled in, where the lower grip cars and the cars moving around, I don't seem to be as comfortable with. So it sort of seems to suit my style, and I don't find it over daunting or anything. Probably just the hardest thing is just the nature of Time Attack is that we are literally doing single lap runs. We go out for the warm-up lap, as you know, we do our one flyer and we box. And even people in motorsport find that so foreign. So over a typical event, we might only do, with practice, 8 or 10 actual runs at best. So it's just trying to build up my understanding and the limit to justify in the car, what the speed can be. That's probably the hardest thing, whether it was exactly this car or a low performance car. To get the best out of it, it still requires time.
Sure. So for someone who hasn't gone faster than, let's say, a road car or a track car, how does the car feel to drive? Like, what would you compare it to? Is it more like a roller coaster or a bucking bull? Or how would you describe it to someone who hasn't driven a car at speed?
I would liken it to a high-speed train that's on rails.
Yep.
But those rails creak a little bit and they move around, and you just
and you're in control.
And you just stay on these rails and we'll be right.
Yeah. So obviously the big turn at Sydney Motorsport Park is turn 1, and you're doing that at speed, and you've got a very unique mentality about that, pinning it flat at turn 1 where a lot of people break. Is that still something that's crucial to a fast lap for you?
It is actually, because what happens with these cars is they produce so much downforce that when you lift, if you were to lift fully off the throttle, it's just like you're slamming a brake on in most cars. So a small lift there, actually with the aero sucking the car to the ground so heavily, actually punishes us a lot in time. It's also corner, everyone watches that, and it's pretty obvious when you do lift.
Yeah.
So we have this discussion a lot because there's times when we're looking at the suspension and the balance of the car where we sometimes give away a little bit of turn 1 to make sure it's better or more suited other places. So it's the hero corner, and undoubtedly it's one of the biggest corners in Australia.
Yeah.
But it's certainly a nice big box to tick when we say we're flat through turn 1.
Yeah, it's always nice to say, isn't it? So you've won races, taken fastest laps, set pole positions. What are your essential tips for a fast lap?
Around S&P in a Time Attack?
Sure.
It's actually commitment with smoothness. So if this car starts to slide, it's going to keep sliding to a spin.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not. There's no drifting. There's no movement going on. Once we get to the point where there's movement, we're in trouble or something's wrong. So it's trying to build up to that point. I mean, the other thing I think is so amazing with this whole package is that we're on the Yokohama AF50 road car, road legal tyre.
Yep.
And so you're always limited to the grip you've got, and that tyre just performs amazingly well. But we need to treat that tyre with care. So even in that one lap, by the end of the lap, we're losing rear end grip. So coming out of turn 8 hairpin, we're struggling for traction. So we're also trying to manage that. So, well, come back to your question. It's having commitment, but with smoothness and being assertive.
Smoothness, being assertive. All right, I'll note those for my next track day, mate. So in terms of that, finding the limit of the car or cars in general, race cars in general, what's the biggest oh shit moment that you've ever had in a car?
Well, unfortunately, it is blasted all over YouTube, as most oh shit moments are. So it was Formula 3 at Monza, and I had a tyre blowout coming into the parabolic of the last corner.
Ooh, at speed.
And just as I got on the brakes, it let go, the rear dropped, the front was unweighted, so I just speared off straight ahead.
How fast were you going?
Oh, I don't know, speed, but it was pretty fast.
You went
and it was the only time I was so fast that the gravel trap didn't slow me up. I just skidded across the top.
Oh, jeez.
And as I come to the wall, I just closed my eyes and I thought, well, they don't open. That's it. But I opened my eyes and walked out.
Well, you're here now, mate. You got to be thankful for that. And well, you've raced at Monza, you've raced at Sepang. Is there a track somewhere around the world that you'd love to take the Porsche to or race around, knowing how it is to drive?
Yeah, it's a good question. Nice timing. Formula 1 just been to COTA, Circuit of the Americas, in Texas, and I went over there a year and a half ago to the Super Lap Battle. They invited me over there, having come over here to the Time Attack, and so impressed with everything going on. And I went over there and drove in a much more sedate car, and that was mightily impressive. That first sequence, the corners down there is really good. I think cars like the top end Time Attack cars, they need a Grand Prix type circuit to justify what they can do. Yeah, it's good fun and a smaller track. And we have actually tested at another circuit, but you need something of the SMP type colour and scale, the big corners where they really come into their own, and that's where they perform.
So do you think Sydney Motorsport Park is kind of the venue for Time Attack as we know it?
I think in Australia, yeah, the circuit itself, I think, is a bit underrated, and maybe in terms of racing door handle to door handle, it is limited. But to perfect a lap there is really difficult. It's got some mega corners. It's just the right length. It helps it's in our backyard, but let's take that out. I think we'd struggle to find a better place for it to be. And the fact that it's been there for so long now, it's becoming the unofficial home, I think is telling that circuit and the facilities now just sort of fit with Time Attack at the moment.
Yeah, lovely. And looking forward to our next event, and this is a question I'll open up to both Rod and Bart. So the three teams, MCA, Tilton and yourselves, you're in a title fight basically. It's been 2 years off. You don't know what the other camp's been doing. You guys have only been focused. Is that the kind of strategy that the team employs, or walk us through the process of dealing with your competitors in pro class?
Look, I think we just try and make our car as fast as we can. And yeah, I want all the other cars to go as fast as they can. And that would be good because that would push us more. But there's a lot more potential in this car than we've shown.
So you guys have been sandbagging for the last 2 years?
In retrospect, yes, in a way, but that doesn't mean we're going slow.
Yeah, that's right.
We're just dealing with what we've got.
Yeah. And how about you, Bart, from a driver's perspective?
Yeah, I think it's a good point Rod made there, and I think the distinction needs to be made where when you're racing door handle to door handle, it breeds about a bit of viciousness. Yeah, and we see it, say, with the battle royale in Formula One at the moment.
Sure, Verstappen, Hamilton.
Yeah, so the teams and the drivers and everyone around in each individual team end up, making the other the enemy, and that's their driving force. Where time attack's a little bit like rallying. I talk to rallying drivers, and they're actually friends with the other drivers. And I think, how's that be? Everyone I race against, I end up either hating or they hate me, because inevitably, some point, you end up running into each other. But like Rod says, we're all there just to do our absolute very best. Just go the fastest we can. And where we stack up, we stack up. That's first, second, or third, so be it. And I think it was one of the events we did where we did a good time. We were in the 19s. I jumped out of the car, and it was just a instinctual reaction. The team came up, we hugged, and it was a real celebration, even though the event hadn't completed. And then someone said to me later, "Oh, that was a bit premature, wasn't it?" And I was a bit sort of flabbergasted. And, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Well, you started celebrating, and the event wasn't even over." And I was like, "Well, yeah, because we're so excited just with what we had achieved. It didn't matter if someone went quicker or what would happen. We just knew where our yardstick was, and we'd push that further." And so I think that's the thing where we just focus on just doing what we can do. And these other guys are gearing up. What Tilton have done, they've restructured their whole team. They've got Brad Shields in the car, who is massively underrated. And then I'm not sure what Hammerhead are doing, but I know they're working hard.
Yeah, I know they're working really quite
So
hard.
it's on. It's not. Maybe we're going as favourites, but I wouldn't consider that.
Yeah, so
When it's time attack, it's about going as fast as you can. It's not really about beating the other car.
It's just about beating
having
the clock.
fastest car.
yeah, so it's beating the clock rather than beating your competitors.
It's not a personal thing. We don't want to make the other cars go slower. We want to make our car go faster.
Of course, and I'm sure everyone is in the same boat as well. So that wraps up all our questions from our fans. What we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break, let these guys have a drink of water, and we're going to come back for a new segment.